remember prime Dwight Howard?
Alley-oop to Howard, and he throws it down and a foul.
Dwight Howard with 41 points for the Orlando Magic.
And blocked by Howard.
The man was an animal in the NBA, and he almost won a championship. No, not this one. I mean, in Orlando. That chip in LA was at the very tail end of his career. But what if I told you he was this close to bringing a finals victory to the Magic? We remember him as a powerful, dominant, and explosive center who controlled the league and dominated teams. But how close was he to winning it all? Why does no one remember prime Superman? This is the glossed over story of Dwight Howard and how he almost won in Orlando.
Alley-oop. Howard at the buzzer!
The year is 2008. Coach Pop and the Spurs have owned the league for a while now. The Big Three in Boston had just won it all, coming off a huge finals win, defeating Kobe and the now Shaq-less Lakers. Derrick Rose then gets drafted, the 08 legendary Team USA brings home the gold, LeBron's leading the Cavs, CP is helping the Hornets finally have a winning year, and Dirk, Brandon Roy, Chauncey Billups, and Yao Ming are all the face of the league. But that year is also when a high-flying defensive presence and dominant force named Dwight Howard began to rise. It's the year when he earned the name Superman, and he began to own the spotlight. Dwight was always a traditional big with how he played. He took up space in the paint and offered his teams a ton of vertical spacing. I mean, a ton. We didn't start calling him Superman for nothing. Dwight was one of, if not the big man with the highest hops in the game while he was in Orlando. The dunks he was pulling off over everyone were just ridiculous. You can ask Amari Stoudemire, Tim Duncan, and Spencer Hawes. Dwight could take off like a rocket, off the dribble or from lobs. I mean, Jameer Nelson and Hedo would just put it in the vicinity of the rim, and Superman would take care of the rest. So yeah, he can dunk, but on top of the offensive end, Dwight was a great defensive presence. He took flight to swat shots like blocks were going out of style. The man once had a game with 10 blocks and finished with a triple-double of 30, 10, and 10. He also had a game with 32 points and 30 rebounds. Yeah, 30. He was the real deal, a guy that could mix it up with the biggest and best of the bruisers on the block, and was a rebounding and blocking machine. Any coach's dream. Even Stan Van Gundy. See, Dwight was one of the more promising young players coming up in the NBA. He was drafted as the #1 pick by the Magic in 2004, and his showing in the NBA was top-notch from the start. Dwight got drafted right out of high school, and in his rookie year, he was alright. He earned 3rd place in the Rookie of the Year votes. But the jump from freshman to sophomore year started to show promise. He went from 12-10 to an improved 16-12.5. The Magic front office saw the opportunity they had to compete for a championship with a young and dominant emerging talent like Howard on the roster, so they added key pieces like Rashard Lewis and Gortat. These were the early onsets of setting the Magic on a trajectory to the NBA Finals. It took some time for that squad to mesh, but behind closed doors, there was quietly an unassuming monster being built. They had a Magic Johnson-sized guard forward in Hedo. If you don't remember, Hedo Turkoglu was the Luka before Luka. Him paired with the lanky and fiery Rashard Lewis were a dangerous combo. I'm talking they wreaked havoc in the East that year. They finished 3rd in the conference in 2009 after finishing the regular season with a 59-23 record. Not a lot of people outside of the Magic's fan base were overly excited to see them in the playoffs. For one, they had never done anything in the postseason, and two, there were still powerhouses like the Celtics and the Cavs for them to contend with. At that time, the question remained, could the Orlando Magic find a way to overcome Boston's Big Three with Ray Allen, Garnett, and Pierce? And if they did, could Dwight and his squad outplay a better LeBron and the Cavs? You see, at that time, the Celtics were reigning supreme in the East. They had just won a title the year before, and the only team that people thought could come close to challenging them was the Cleveland Cavaliers. That was because the Cavs had that one guy on their roster, but the Magic had one of, if not the most complete roster in the league, and they were quickly figuring out where and how each piece should work. From Jameer Nelson and Alston dishing dimes, Rashard and JJ Reddick's catch-and-shoot threes, to the bigs Dwight and Gortat down low along with Hedo, Foyle, Courtney Lee, and Petrus, and even Ty Lue, the roster was deep, and they could shoot. At the end of the playoffs in 2009, this group had the most attempted threes of any team in the playoffs, ever. They put up 559 threes during that playoff run. The next closest team to them was the Rockets in the 1995 playoffs with 483 attempts. This Magic team could play the inside-out game, the outside-in game, the pick and roll, the drive and kick, the run and gun, whatever it was, they could get it done. Oh, they also had that season's Defensive Player of the Year anchoring them. So how'd it come about? The Magic started the playoffs going up against the 6th-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers managed to get Game 1 and 3, but Andre Miller and Andre Iguodala were thoroughly outclassed by Dwight and the Magic. They easily won that series 4-2. Dwight was an absolute monster, averaging 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 blocks. The next opponent they saw in the second round was the defending champs, the Boston Celtics. This Boston team really could match up with the Magic in every way. They had deadly shooters led by Ray Allen. They had great wings like The Truth. Guys like KG and Rondo rounded out their entire team. These teams were pretty evenly matched, except that the Celtics didn't have a Dwight Howard on their team. And to make matters worse, the big ticket was injured and couldn't face up against Dwight. Many people still argue that if KG had played in that series, Boston would have repeated. This series did go to 7 games, and the reigning champs figured out how to slow down Dwight's scoring even with KG gone. But Dwight was simply too much of a monster. He averaged 17 rebounds, 16 points, and 3 blocks in those 7 games. I mean, in Game 6, Superman had 23 points, 22 rebounds, and 3 blocks. 23 and 22, bro. Hedo carried the scoring load in Game 7 for the team with 25, but Dwight anchored their defense with 16 boards, 5 blocks, and added 12 points. True, on the offensive end, he wasn't getting as many buckets, but sometimes you gotta win in different ways. Not like the Eastern Conference Finals, though. The Magic were headed in to play a lesser Cavs team, but Cleveland still had a king who could dominate himself. LeBron averaged 38, 8, and 8. Averaged. The king was awesome, but the team was nowhere as complete as Orlando. The Magic won 3 of the first 4 games, and the series was basically done at that time. Bron did pull the Cavs to another win in Game 5 where he notched a 27, 14, and 12 triple-double, but the Magic got the best of them in Game 6. This was another incredible series for Dwight, especially since the Cavs didn't have a big to really affect him on either side of the floor. The man was able to average 26, 13, and 3 the whole series. For the first time in 14 years, the Orlando Magic had made their way back to the NBA Finals, and they got there by outwilling and outsmarting everyone in the East. It was everything a young Dwight on a team surrounded by very capable veterans could possibly hope for. Here he was, Superman, one of the upcoming superstars in the NBA, only 23 years old, and one of the leaders of this squad. Unfortunately for Superman, There are two teams in the finals, and the team standing in the way of his first championship was the Los Angeles Lakers. And not just any Lakers team at that, but one led by the Black Mamba. A Black Mamba who lost the last finals to the C's and was out for absolute revenge. Unlike the Celtics, who were without a key contributor in the playoffs, and unlike the Cavs, who only really had King James and a bunch of salary placeholders, the Lakers had their full complement of stars and a complete roster. If Dwight and the guys wanted that chip, they had to outright win every single game, because the Lakers weren't planning on losing any. They dared Dwight to play with kryptonite all series long. In Game 1, Kobe went off on the Magic for a 40-piece. The key advantage the Lakers had that teams in the East didn't have was 3 legit bigs that could take turns keeping Dwight under pressure. Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum, and Lamar Odom all took turns at the young Dwight. Orlando's vets couldn't even help him out as they had their own issues. Petrus was the high scorer for the Magic with 14 off the bench. That was good enough for a 25-point blowout. Game 2 saw the Magic showing up much more prepared for the Lakers' defense. It was clear the Lakers had prioritized keeping Dwight at bay and forcing the others to beat them. Rashard went off for 34, 11, and 7, while Hedo dropped 22, 6, and 4. The Lakers' plan did work. Dwight only managed to put up 17 points. The Magic needed a bit more from him to beat the Lakers. They ended up losing 96 to 101. Down 2-0 going into Game 3 at home, the Magic were in a desperate situation and could not afford to go down 3-0 to Kobe Bryant. They needed Dwight and the others to show up and support Lewis and Hedo, who had been doing most of the heavy lifting. And they did just that.
Shot clock winding down. Howard against Bryant. Across the lane. Dumps it. Alley-oop to Howard. They found Dwight Howard down. Howard good position down low. Flicks it up against Bryant. Stolen by Petrus, but Gasol gets it back. Bryant thrown away by Howard. And the Orlando Magic are back.
Rafer Alston dropped a massive 20 points and Petrus gave them 18. Dwight finally broke 20 for the series, dropping 21 to go with 14 rebounds. The Magic got their Game 3 win, winning it 108 to 104. Could this mean that they had finally turned the corner? Could this mean that the young 23-year-old superstar Dwight had figured out the Lakers' defense? Yeah, right. They didn't figure out a thing. They lost games 4 and 5 behind woeful performances from Dwight and incredible Mamba performances from the eventual Finals MVP, Mr. Bryant. As usual, he was a monster on the glass, but the size the Lakers could throw at him in Bynum and Pau, plus Odom at times, was just too overwhelming. This young superstar, who had averaged 21 points for the season and 22 in the Eastern Conference games, could only manage to get 15 per game in the finals. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to place all the blame at Dwight's feet, not at all. I'm only highlighting one of the reasons why he missed his opportunity to get a chip. Outside of his poor scoring, he did well in his role of rebounds and blocks, but the game plan from Phil Jackson was just too genius on stopping this monster. The Magic didn't have enough bigs or even a proper game plan to slow down the Lakers' bigs, and the other problem, they didn't have an answer for Kobe, the man they call the Black Mamba. Kobe was determined not to lose 2 finals in a row. He went full Mamba and averaged 32.4 points, 7.4 assists, and 5.6 rebounds.
5-point Orlando lead. Trying to send his finals back to Los Angeles. Kobe Bryant and the finish. Bryant fires a three. Puts it in. Kobe Bryant from downtown. looks inside, finds Gasol, count it, and a foul. Bryant gets it right back. Falling away, tough shot, puts it in. Oh, what a shot from Kobe Bryant.
Kobe Bryant pulls up. It's good again. Back-to-back jumpers. Staples Center. Bryant gets them drive, puts it up, shot's good. Tough shot, the Lakers back up by one.
He's making plays. Wow, and speak of making plays, Bryant banks it in, off balance, falling down.
In the Orlando Magic, the Magic have not made another finals appearance since 2009. In fact, they haven't even gotten past the first round since then. Dwight would end up leaving Orlando in 2012 and wouldn't make it back to the finals until 2020, when he'd win his first championship ring with the LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Rajon Rondo-led Los Angeles Lakers. Be careful what you wish for. Your losses might end up being lessons, and they just might help you win a championship.